Hey, muy buenos dias, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. And as always, muchísimas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, prayers, amazing support, as everything you put down and extend my way. De cora se los agradezco. Thank you. And before getting into the story in hand, do please like, share, and subscribe. Well, today I want to touch on a peeling that belongs, you could say, to the federal faction, which is Nito from Black Angels. I don't really know the extent he has at the moment with Black Angels or Pomona, Fontana, as I would hear eventually when I was in the feds, right? But allow me to take you back on this one too. I don't recall the exact year. It was from 2010 to 2012. It was among them. Couple years, I disculpen. But basically there was a lot of soldados, right, per se, that were from chino sinners that were under different pili, like Daryl, T, Mike. If I'm not mistaken, at one point for Frank B as Terco. Yeah, I'm not gonna say I was close to Terco, but I was his you could say buffer zone, right? When it came to things ricocheting. So anyways, Terco was in touch with, well, he had a little mess out there under his name, right? Doing his thing and collecting, making money for him. More so Terco's more on a power trip, as you guys know. They hit the system. He was more concentrating on taking over yards or getting control of them. I won't say taking over because he was always on the defensive, excuse me, more so, right? But anyways, again, the camaradas from Chino Sinners, they had Hugo, right? From a lot of different angles. It wasn't just for in a specific angle. And at this time, there was two camaradas from Fontana that were on la línea right there in Pelican Bay. And they were throwing bolitas, papelitos, cuartitos, for Terco, just to send for canteen, you could say. Just something small, but at the same time, he had his presence on the yard, right? And there was about six camaradas from Chino Sinners on the yard. But I want to circle around two camaradas that would eventually go back there, right? For some reason, they felt they were covered. That they were shielded by a pili, which in reality, even when it's legit, it's never that, right? It's always a guy solo type of thing, right? But anyways, they were doing their thing. When they would get asked, they would say they're already touching base with the pili, but at the same time, they didn't want to put the pili's name and you know just certain things. But at the same time, you gotta walk around toes on bottles like that, right? Because if a pili you're addressing to go ahead and give the okay to be removed on the yard, remove these individuals, right? Which is Gato and Flaco, and well, more so them than anybody, right? They were the pointers. And then you sit down and you just roll with the punches. You're not gonna call something that for some reason the pilis are taking long investigating it, right? There was numerous pilis at this time that had that extra reach to the linea in one way or another, if you guys get what I'm saying. But everybody was minimizing these two individuals, but they were hitting, making feria, but from their words, they were touching base with a pili, right? A pili was getting paid. So anyways, they had a homeboy on the yard, which was Wino, right? He was an older vato that for a lot of years, I guess, he was under Mike, and well, he was doing his thing from Chino Sinners, and I guess at one point he went up to these two individuals and felt that homie trust, right, per se, or that obligation that basically when he told him like, hey, you gotta fall in line with Mike because he's out there in the town, or however that played out amongst them, right? And they came out with that we're already in touch with somebody, and but they didn't want to disclose because it was odors, which is BS, right? Me personally, if I would have been out there, it's when that was said, it was go time, right? Because they, as a sureño, you gotta identify who you're under to be able to work, specifically with the yard uh, filled with different pilis and soldados, right? But nevertheless, homeboy got upset and he told him like, "Hey, miss me with all that, you know, and if you don't tell me who the pili is, and I'm gonna start pressing the issue, cause if you're out here freelancing, you're from the town, you're from the neighborhood, and you're just gonna give a bad name or taste to the neighborhood." Again, he was an older vato, different thoughts, you know, and nevertheless, they said they were gonna get at the Pili and they will get back on him by the morning, right? Well, next morning, don't know if they got at Nito because they were working for Nito, right? And he told him, Charles, don't allow somebody to question. I could be guessing. I could sit here guess a million things, but I don't know how it played out. The facts are that Gato and Flaco came out and they whacked their own homeboy. They didn't ask if other camaradas had something going for a Pili or if there was something bigger playing along. They felt they were under the one, right? As every Sureño does when they're strictly under a Pili, right? It's a fact because you could say in some sense I was there, right? Starstruck per se. But anyways, they did that. That came with a shoe turn, and they would eventually reach back there, right? And they landed in the worst situation, right? Where they could be questioned correctly. And this time it was directives from a Billy straight, disclose the senor you're touching base with, and at the same time, they couldn't refuse. So of course they say, with the Pilinito and the feds, which that alone was just suicide. For one, the state is the yard. There's certain protocols to follow for a Pili to be on a yard, in the state yard, right? If you belong to the federal faction. Don't get me wrong, there is Pilis that have that much Google, but not everyone has it. As you know, again, I don't know Nito's reach. I would hear about it later on, but at this time, be honest, when I got that on my peel stating Nito from Black Angels, I was like, man, I was side busted, right, by it. To be sincere, I was surprised. Because for one, a Billy from the feds, he would know better. Second, at this time, I thought I knew all the Billys from Black Angel, right? And to understand Black Angels is the way their neighborhood functions, right? That's their end goal. But nevertheless, I now heard about this Billy. As many others, I know there's a lot of names that are common, but believe me, every show I went to or landed, individuals I had not ever heard of were carnales, señores, Billys, however you want to call them. But nevertheless, I reported it in that basically these vatos were not only on the yard under Nito from Black Angels. Of course, I sent his name, full name, everything, and it came back that yeah, he's a legit up and up señor, but he's able to work in the city, and I believe Fontana. Don't quote me if it's Colton or Pomona, right? One of them two. Anyways, it was two cities besides his own, and Of course, in the feds, whatever he's doing out there with the brothers out there, right? But nevertheless, he wasn't one of the ones that was allowed specifically on a yard where there's already so much traffic there, right, senores? So as things started unfolded, I guess homeboys had a whole little crew out there in Chino, and again, Chino was already divided by how many camaradas that were in touch with Pilis, and it wasn't one of the, you could say, boundaries for him, right? But he felt he could, cause it's always a power type of thing, right? They feel they can do that, and nothing's gonna happen. And more so, it always does not happen to them. At least, it always ricochets to camaradas. Camaradas will pay the piper, to be sincere. And basically, T and Mike, they questioned these individuals on how much they were pulling a weed from Chino, from the yard in Pelican Bay, and they had a yard underneath this Billy in Ironwood, I believe, Ironwood or Centinela, excuse me, and nobody knew. They kept had it under the wraps. It's surprising because again, it was between 2010 2012 where you would think a lot more people were more hip on it and would not allow this to slide through. But you see, it's a common thing in the system. There's always them sleepers. On in this occasion, it wasn't the Camarada's fault, right? It was them getting guided by a Pili that was BSing them. Straight up, he was throwing them into the wolf's cave, and he knew he was in the wrong, and he knew it was going to hit the fans. But he was greedy. He wanted feria. He wanted power. And again, at this time, I didn't know his reach out there in the feds or on the streets. He was new to me. What I do know is that, it came down from not just Terco and Mike, from other individuals, from Colton, other Pilis, all from Dean, that since these two cats allowed themselves not to follow the correct guidelines, right, before stepping up to the plate, giving proper respect to Pilis already on the yard. But I understand the camarada, gato and flaco, because, you're on a yard where it's a message system per se, but then you got like 10 different Pilis doing their own thing you're going to answer to. And then you got that individual you're doing things for is telling you you don't have to tell him nothing. They ask you, shine it on, which that's wrong in itself, right? First and foremost, at least when I started doing my time, a Sureño had right to ask, the right to inform himself. It was a common respect, and it wasn't just amongst camarada Pili, it was among camaradas, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all equal. We should be. Just some with more responsibilities, right? But anyways, without getting off track, it was wrong in itself for him to tell the homies to basically keep doing their thing and don't answer nothing, none of their business, period. He belonged to a different faction, the federal faction, which that's wrong in itself, right? Because even though everyone's aware of it, I really should not say that about the next faction because it's considered politicking where it should. But, basically, the camaradas took the rap because I guess when they touched base with Nito, he he would completely say, no better. I would never tell him to do that. Yes, they were touching up with me, but they were saying also a respect thing. Never asked him for anything. Everything was done by their actions. The common thing, a pili is not gonna fall for his camaradas. It's very rare. But he's gonna make sure the camaradas take the fault so he don't have that hanging on himself, right? To feel it's gonna come out to light. So he took offense on top of everything. And he requested to Pelican Bay that to do him a favor since they were using his name in vain to go ahead and take care of that it would be much appreciated. At this time, it was bad in the minds of a lot of Pilis, I'll just leave it like that. So they basically wrote at me and told me to express it as much as I could back there, right? That these vatos were no good, but as long as they were there, they were to be treated as camaradas, so they hit a main line. You know, it's shameful, but that's the game. Specifically up in the shoes at this time, right? You can't question another Pili. What are you gonna do? Disrespect a Pili and say, nah, you're lying, and start a conflict amongst Pelican Bay and the federal system? It's easier to just take care of two individuals, right? You know, as far as I read, they were sending home with good feria, and he was off bounds. He should not have been in Chino. You know, he shouldn't be in Colton. He had two cities, Onterio, Fontana, and another city. Do excuse me, you know, been a while. But anyways, he denied everything. Not only that, him himself put his soldados in the hat for being loyal to him, for keeping money in his pocket. And they would eventually hit Salinas Valley, right? 2012 was when they left the shoe. I remember because Almapil came back that they had gotten wet bad to the point of no return, right? And when this happened, what do you think Nito was doing over there? Problem solved. Let's drop right there. I got mine. There's nothing to come. You see, to those that have not been there, don't put yourself in the situation because this happens more so than you would think possible. You know, Pilis constantly are pushing them boundaries because they're power hungry. Most of them are dope fiends, so they want that. They're jealous of their brother. They want more, more, more. You guys know it comes with power, right? Greed. So they're always thinking they could get over. I mean, it would be a lot harder now that every one of them is out, but talking about in the shoot time, right? Where everybody was slammed. The feds were the only ones that had that action. Don't allow yourself to get misled, lied to. You have the right. For example, you know, even if a feelie tells you he wants you to take control of a town, a neighborhood, show respect in that aspect of talk to your homeboys as a group decide. You know, now everybody made it obligation, which I'm not going to advise you to go against what you're being requested because now more so than ever it's going to take your career. But don't even put yourself in that situation. If you feel something shady, run it through another Billy. But again, you might be setting yourself up to get hit. You see, another Billy could take it as you're talking, you're negative about one of his brothers, then their brothers. A Sureño ain't allowed to question them. They go around the whole Sureño program, but you can't question something that you know is going to lead to you crashing. Basically, you have that decision to make when you know it's going to hit the fence, which is to throw everything away. You know, stay true to everything, even the program, but just be smart. You see, later on when I hit the feds, I had me homeboy in person, but he was doing a lot when it came to Chicharron, right, Negra. And a lot of homies were getting smugged up for the same reason. He would be in areas he shouldn't be, requesting camaradas to keep things from not just camaradas, but other beliefs. And when things hit the fan, he would wash the camaradas up. That's why I always say it and I'll say it again. Every individual is different. Be wise. It's one thing to be like, muy buenos días, muy buenas tardes, ¿cómo está? Saludos y respetos. Okay. I just wanted to let you know our respect. Aquí estoy para el programa. Cualquier cosa, con gusto. Espero que esté bien and take off. That's why do your homework. Not every Billy's the way like greedy, selfish. There is good Billy's. Unfortunately, they get faded out, right? You know, Nito was making bank without getting in his business. And he probably is till date. But you have Billy's that use and abuse camaradas in the sense of making them pay rent, you know, disciplining them by money wise to them, to their pocket, politicking against their canales, and then there's Billy's like this that will get you to do things for his power and reach. You might be like, oh, this is legit, especially because he's so close to Mondo, right? But just be wise. Every word counts. Do your background. I couldn't even start to count how many homies I heard when I was in the Fed. He had gotten hit for using his name in vain, which I personally had this encounter with them, with two of his own homeboys, or excuse me, from Gato and Flaco, from Chino Sinners that were real loyal to him. It didn't mean nothing. You see loyalty with those you grew up, those in your neighborhood, that maintain true to your family, to yourself. So do please stay true to yourself and loyal to your loved ones. Have a great day.